Hello there, today I'm doing a video called Crazy Throwback Debuts, which is about two different debuts of films, Amer and Beyond the Black Rainbow, which were both like throwbacks to earlier eras of film, that there were directors who threw up their film fan credentials in their debut, the way a lot of directors do, and just said, this is what I love in their films, and made interesting films that weird. I didn't engage with either of them totally, but I can see me rewatch them and be engaging them more later on. It's that thing is, sometimes you watch something and say, it didn't quite work through the first time for me, but I can see myself in the right mood for it later and maybe finding a lot more about it as I go that maybe I wasn't quite there for the first time. That happens. I mean, and these two are two films that it could definitely happen with me with, because they are crazy enough to, work that way. So Amer is directed by Hélène, Cattet and Bruno Forzani, and Beyond the Black Rainbow is Panos Cosmatos. His dad was George Cosmatos, and he made Rambo and Cobra and things like that, and Tombstone. And Amer was made by French directors or Belgian directors. One of them was, I'm not sure if it's shot in Belgium, but also shot in French. So they are like European directors. So and I've got a few of their other films now that I'm going to watch, but I haven't watched it yet. Like Let the Bodies Tan, and there's another one I can't remember the name of because the title is really long, complicated, like a Giallo title. And this is influenced by Giallo, but doing it as an art house film. It's like what if Antonioni did Giallo is the best way to put it. But also it's influenced by De Palma. It's influenced by the kind of the new wave of tearing apart the form and bringing it back together. So there's Argento riffs, but it's Argento of like Suspiria and Inferno, really, where the kind of almost the supernatural experience of the film is more important than the plot. So it's taking like some of the Giallo conventions, but it's actually more influenced by the Argento of the kind of crazier film that maybe something that the Giallo fans don't like. And it's influenced by the De Palma stuff of like Dress to Kill and Body Double, and this kind of voyeuristic thing of the body being very complicated to the person watching, the person experiencing the film, and the characters experiencing the film. And sisters and things like that. It's much more like about the experiential element of that. Also Antonioni with his early films, and even some of his later films, like he did one, I can't remember the title. It was the three directors doing one erotic film in the 90s. Soderbergh did one, and Antonioni did one, and this reminds me a lot of the Antonioni element, which is my favourite part of that film, by the way. And this reminds me a lot of that, where it's all about like, the body and eroticism and moving through landscapes. But Amer is based about this young girl who, in the first section of the film, her grandfather has died, and it's through her view of her family as she's like experiencing the deaths, and it feels like it's kind of witch's cauldron, like there's something supernatural going on, like the body holds mysteries, like there's there's different necklaces and things, and she's imagining her aunt to be like a witch. She imagines this, she sees her mum and dad having sex at one point by mistake. She's very intrigued by everything. Everything's almost like a plot, and everything's like in her head, like it's almost a dreamlike state as she's experiencing death. She sneaks down to see the body, and there's a necklace in the hands, and you have to open up the hands of the dead body that are all stiff already to take it out, and it's a wonderful sequence. It's my favourite part of the film. It's so good that the rest of the film can't quite keep up with it. It's that thing, as some films have that, is like, you start so strong that even though you do some good stuff later, it's not quite as strong as this bit. And basically, you have different actors playing this girl at certain points in life, where you've got her as a girl about 10, then there's her as a teenager, then there's her as a woman, a mature woman coming back. So she goes from being in this big house where she's imagining all her family being almost supernatural, to then she goes to when she's basically through puberty and she's noticing men, and she's basically her and her mother walking into town, her mother going for a haircut, and just her experiencing that and seeing the attention of all the boys and seeing all these bikers looking at her, and it's all done like for a 40-minute set piece. And it's about the idea of how it's almost every moment is like done like a Sergio Leone. Not in the style of Sergio Leone, but just the idea of all the details. Like, if you watch Once Upon a Time in the West, where the drops of water and things, that's what she's noticed. She's noticed every little detail, and if she's running, the camera goes strange, and you get a sense of what it feels like to her rather than what it is to the outside. And just walking down the streets and seeing people pay attention to her, walking to the hairdressers and just having to be told to be outside, torturing a young boy who notices her and she notices him, kicking away his ball, and then essentially seeing her mother's disapproval of her. That's all it's about. That's everything. This whole set piece. And I think it's the one bit. It's like, this is when you're thinking the film could be a bit shorter because the film is too long, and this is where it was a little too much of that. It was so much of a set piece. I felt in initial viewing that it was, just too far. Now, I watched both of these films on projector, so I got the full sound and visuals of it. Then we go to the sequence where she's older, she's coming back to the home. Her family seems to have died at this point, but she's still experiencing life and attractions to people in a way that's psychotic, in a way that comes back to what she was like in the first section, where she's imagining too much. But you're also getting stuff in the second section where she's imagining almost every little detail of a cab ride back home, which obviously feels like it's inspired by the cab ride in Inferno in some ways, even though Inferno wasn't as sexual as this. And then eventually you have a serial killer, psychopath, stalking her, and it's like, a sense of everything's in her head and everything's not in her head, but you do get a sense of you're dealing with a psychotic at this point. Like, she hasn't moved on from some of these crazy thoughts, in the sense of she's been crazy all along, and you've been given excuses for it. So that's why it's interesting. That's why the film's interesting, in the sense of, in a rewatch, you're much more alert to all the kind of craziness, and not explain it away. It's just her in puberty or something. It's so much more of like the kind of crazy mindset of someone who's not quite there. And that's where the film succeeds. That's why the film's haunting at the end, the sense of you were watching somebody who was deeply unhinged in lots of ways, but it's unhinged in a way that's quite seductive and quite straight, very feminine, and it's a different world. So I'm thinking rewatching it might be an interesting experience. And it does have a feeling of it's a short story been expanded to 90 minutes, and it works on that level, because by the end of it is haunting the way a short story can be haunting, where cause you've only got the briefest amount of detail, but ultimately you're filling in a lot of gaps yourself, which is what's so cool about short stories, is filling in things that maybe the author wants you to fill in yourself and not over explain things. But the middle section does get a little bit too much at times. So it's, I do feel it's like 10 minutes too long, and it all comes from that middle section. But it's still worth watching. Just be aware you're watching a very stylized film. You're not going to watch something that's normal. But I'm interested in watching more films by these directors and seeing what they've got, because I did enjoy it, even though it did test my patience a few times. But ultimately the result was worth it. I'm trying to be as vague as possible in the last section. Because I don't want to take away enjoyment of it, because it's fun. Now, Beyond the Black Rainbow is from the director of Mandy, which I saw first. And I was told by the Solitary Ronin that this was better than Mandy. Mandy was a disappointment compared to this. So essentially, he hyped it up too much for me. Because I was expecting... Because I really enjoyed Mandy. I thought it was wonderful. And he was so keen on Mandy. So he said, this one's much better. And I saw it and it was like, this one's not much better. This one's enjoyable. It's interesting. It is a story of... it's set in the 80s. And it's a story of this... And it feels like an art house riff on... like X-Men type of thing. Where it's like, you've got kind of people who have evolved in strange ways. And they're trying to control them. And they're... you've got lots of... You've got a strange guy in the centre of it who you can tell is wearing a wig, but you're trying to work out what he's about. You can tell there's makeup going on. And you're trying to find out what he's actually about and what does he want. And there's lots of fantastical 80s kitschy kind of production design, which is interesting to watch. It's like you're in a world that you like. If you grew up in the 80s, you haven't been in for a long time, so it's interesting to watch. And it's in love with this world, and you've got a story that's very slight, but the world itself makes it worth it. And you've got lots of interesting things going on about how the crazy people are and how bizarre it can be. I think the problem for me though is I've watched Legion, which is the Noah Hawley TV show, which did a lot of this stuff as well. And it came out about a decade after this film was made. And maybe it was influenced by, maybe it wasn't. It was much more 70s than 80s. And it had the same idea of mental instability and superheroes and things like that. And I have to admit, I enjoyed Legion a lot more, because Legion had more character work that was interesting, I thought it was more visually interesting than this. So I think partially the problem for me in this film is I've just recently watched Legion and now watching this, and it's like two films that are... It's a film and a TV show that are very similar. And then I can attach myself to the characters in Legion. This one I cannot attach myself to anybody. They've all felt alienating to me. Which Amer had the same thing, but Amer had a more interesting dynamic to me than this one did. This one just felt like... I've seen it before in lots of different ways. And I'm interested in rewatching it when I hadn't seen it so close to Legion. And there's a lot of interesting things going on in it. The lead character's an interesting character in lots of ways, but he is alienating. He's distancing in the way that this film feels very influenced by early Cronenberg, but not the Cronenberg of Shivers, the Cronenberg of Crimes of the Future, the original Crimes of the Future made before Shivers, which were very much art house and emotionally distant. Now, the interesting thing about this film, it was financed by the director himself because his dad had passed on, and he had all the residuals from things like Tombstone and Rambo and things like that. I think he said it was Tombstone, because he was now getting all those residuals because that is a popular film. So Tombstone paid for this film, which is quite interesting. And it is visually, you're always engaged by the imagination display and you're wondering where was it going. But I wasn't attached to the story. Ultimately, as the story was unfolding, I just felt like I was watching something that meant a lot to the director, but I couldn't connect to it. I just didn't feel that kind of connection. The way I felt very connected to Mandy, but this one I just did not feel that connection at all. It just felt like a stylistic exercise in some ways to me. But you go to Ronin, his video, it'll be completely different. He'll say it's amazing because he loved it, genuinely loved it, and I genuinely couldn't connect with it. And that's what's interesting in watching different people talk about a film, because for some he's right and for some I'm right. Because it is an interesting film, well made by a director, I promise. But it's which one would you prefer, Mandy or this one? I'm more on the Mandy side of things. But that's just life, that's the way it goes. But I definitely recommend both of them. Both of them you should see. They are unique. They are very different from anything else out there. They are two of the most unique debuts around from this time period of 2009, 2010 time period. They're definitely films you should see and give a shot to, because there's a good chance you're going to love it. But there's also a chance you might not. But it's going to be worth the effort. I've been trying to be as vague as I can in Beyond the Black Rainbow, more than Amer. Amer's kind of simple, actually. Beyond the Black Rainbow, there's more to it, but I've been trying to, like hell, to explain it without explaining everything. I'm just trying to explain the stuff that you'd get fairly early on in the film, and not give you other things that you'd figure out. It also feels, there's moments where it feels inspired by Dark Star as well. There's one moment that was like, that's Dark Star. That's definitely inspired by Dark Star. It also feels a bit inspired by THX 118, 138 as well. There's just various influences there. But I'd say go watch both these films. They are interesting. You'll probably like one more than the other, but I couldn't tell you which one you'll like more than the other, because it's up to taste in this case. So I hope you enjoyed this video. That's me for now. Bye.